Yo everyone, what's going on? This is insane. I've got the Meta Quest3 VR headset here and I can play drums in VR and it comes through into the computer. This now means that if I want to lay down some drums in some real songs that I'm working on, I can just grab this headset and start smashing away. Alright, so this is what I'm seeing in VR. The field of view that you're going to see in this video is going to be a lot smaller. When you actually have the headset on, it's this crazy immersive 360 degree sort of room. But I know that when I record, the box is a little bit smaller. It's just the way that it is with this stuff. So I've got a drum kit set up here. You can actually just pick up, if you wanted an extra snare, you can just put it there in that virtual space. But we'll get rid of that for now. So I've got this hooked up to GGD One Kit Wonder Pop Punk, and I've laid out the drum kit exactly how I've got that in the program. So we've got two tom drums, left and right crash, a ride, a splash, hi-hat closed, and you can hold a modifier to have that open, and then your almighty snare, and then your kick drum down there. Now admittedly, I'm not the world's greatest drummer, but let's take a look at the different articulations and velocities and see how it all sort of reacts. So So the obvious questions, how is all this stuff going? Well, I've got the Meta Quest3 VR headset here. Now this is one of the ones that has all the brains and everything here. It's completely wireless. You don't need a computer or anything. It's all self-contained. So once you have the headset, of course, that is a no-brainer. The app that runs everything is called Paraddidle. Now this is like a Guitar Hero sort of app where you can just download drumming songs. You can actually download custom songs, but they have a whole bunch of inbuilt ones. So if you just want to do some drum tutorials, that's what Paraddidle is mainly for. It's more of a game, drum practicing sort of thing, but I managed to get it to go one step further because I'm mainly interested in getting this set up with MIDI drums. The next two sort of links in the chain to get MIDI going, wireless MIDI. The first thing you need is LoopMidi. This really sets up the wireless side of things. You just install it, run it. I'll take you through the basic setup. And then the last thing, you'll need the Paraddidle Song Creator, which has Paraddidle utilities, PD utilities. You just download this stuff, install it, run it. And between this and LoopMidi, that's how you get the wireless MIDI out of this straight onto your computer in, I don't know what the latency is, and I'm not going to say real time, but it's basically real time. It is super, super quick. So the next thing you might want to look at is a foot pedal, because obviously you just have these triggers, you have nothing to do the kick pedal with. Now you can do the kick pedal with the trigger back here, or you can press the A button, but obviously that's super confusing if you're flailing your hand around and you're doing a kick pedal like that. So the sort of consensus or the go-to kick pedal is just one of these. I got off Amazon for 20 bucks or less. You know, it's not the most robust pedal. Makes a bit of a clicking sound in the real world, but you know, it's got a long cable, and just for toying around with this stuff for 20 bucks or so, it really gets the job done. I'd be interested in getting an upgraded pedal, but we're just doing sort of round one stuff here, just checking this out. Now another little thing you might want to get here, this is a USB-A cable. It's kind of big, and obviously you would just think to get a USB-A to USB-C adapter, but I got one and I found that this wasn't the best connection. I didn't like having this weight sort of hanging off the side here. So I actually just picked up this little adapter, super, super cheap. Get this stuff off Amazon or wherever you normally go shopping. And I find that it takes the weight off everything, and you can see once you have it all connected, it's much better weight distribution having it like that. So having some sort of 90-degree connector is definitely the way to go with this stuff. And then I just thread this cable through the back there. Not the sexiest look, but when you're playing it, you don't see anything. It's a rock solid connection. I've really spent like 10 to 20 hours messing around with Paraddidle. This stuff works great, no problems with the USB-C port. Alright, so you've got the headset, you've got wireless MIDI going, you've got something like Reaper or Studio One, some kind of DAW, some kind of music hosting app. But all you're doing is sending the MIDI files. You need some sort of drum library to fire off things. Here I'm using GGD one kit wonder. There's heaps of free different libraries, so if you don't want to spend too much money, I'll leave a link down below. I think Steven Slate Drums 5.5 has a free library, ML Drums has a free library. There's a few free options. I'll leave some cheap options, some free options. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, because I've got some drum library reviews that I'm going to be doing, so very, very interesting timing. But anyway, this one here is GGD One Kit Wonder Pop Punk, snare, toms, all the cymbals, and you can see in the video that I set everything up exactly the way that this is. Alright, so I've just hooked up the kick pedal, I've hit record in Reaper. I'm going to record this MIDI, let's see how good my timing is. Alright, so let's take a look at the MIDI here. I've just pulled it up. Now, I'll definitely say the tracking and latency of this stuff is unfathomably good. It works way, way better than I would have expected. These misfires and mistimings that you're hearing, I'm a terrible drummer. I've probably had not even an hour of real time at a real kit in my whole entire life. I've spent way more time on Paradiddle than I have on a real kit, so my drumming's terrible. But anyway, let's check out the MIDI and just see how it sounds. If you want to visually see somebody's brain thinking, definitely around here you can see the lag. Alright, so just quantize these two bars. I've left the velocities as is, but I've quantized things so it's really on the grid. It's more perfect. Let's just take a listen to it and see how it sounds. So much tighter, so much cleaner. All right, let's take a look at LoopMidi. Very, very easy to set up. Just set up LoopMidi. You just need to have one entry here. You can have it looking exactly the same as mine. It's just default. I didn't do anything. I just hit plus, added a port. This is what the port looks like in LoopMidi. Super, super easy stuff. So this stuff is sending the information wirelessly. I've got a router here in my house, and I've also got an extender here in this room. I always just make sure that the headset and the computer is connected to the extender. I just want the quickest sort of path going. Everything seems to work for me. So once you get LoopMidi going, you need the PD utilities, the Paraddidle utilities. I've got that up here. And you can choose your MIDI output. So there's a whole bunch of different options, some different devices that I had in my time. And I can see that LoopMidi is here. So just make sure you select that first. Now you're going to get this IP address from inside the Paradiddle app. I'll show that up on screen now. So just type in that same number and hit connect. Once you get that going, you've now got LoopMidi and Paradiddle ready to read the information coming out of the Paradiddle app. Well, let's talk about some of the tech hurdles that you're going to need to overcome. The first one is MIDI mapping. So I'm not going to go too deep on MIDI mapping, but each single hit is a MIDI node, and then your computer reads that node. Sometimes when you're messing around with different drum kits have different MIDI mappings. You don't have to go this deep. Whatever drum library you use will probably have GM. Things will probably line up, but if something doesn't line up, that's why. It's because of the MIDI mapping. If you have any questions, join my Discord, leave questions in the YouTube video, I'll be able to help you out. Now, the second thing that I had to overcome was the velocity. Now, the velocity of every drum library is going to be a little bit different. You know, the velocity that's the sweet spot for GGD Pop Punk is going to be a little bit different to Counter Kit, all the new MDL Tone, Ultimate Heavy Drums. They're all going to be a little bit differently. It's just the way that they sample things. And I found this cool little thing in Reaper called MIDI Velocity Scaler, and it's basically scaling things up by 2, and I just found that was the sweet spot. Like, everything you've heard so far has been scaling this up by 2. So if I just disable this and then we take a listen to the MIDI, let's just see if it just sounds a little bit weaker than it was in all the other examples. No bueno. Let's turn the scaling back on. And once again, that's just because the sweet spots of the velocities they used. I played around with that. I think I started like 1.4, 1.6, eventually up to 2-ish. sounded great there, didn't have to think about it. So if you have any problems with the library that you're using, doesn't quite sound as good, maybe you need to pump up that velocity, and hopefully your DAW has something similar to what is happening here in Reaper. Now another obvious tech hurdle is you have the VR headset on, so you're in VR, but then you need to do something on the computer, and sometimes you have to like lean really close to the computer to sort of see what you're doing on screen. At first, this was insane. I almost didn't want to make this video because of how crazy it was to sort of dual wield VR and the computer. If you had two people doing things, amazing, because one person could just control the computer, the other person would just be drumming. But if you're doing things solo, you are just going to have to get a little bit good at reading the monitor and then going back to the VR. Quick little tip, if you double tap things, it just minimizes the apps. Super handy stuff. Now another tech hurdle is sometimes, even though you've got all this stuff hooked up, if you minimize the Paradiddle app for too long, it just loses connection and you need to quit the app and open it back up. Every time you open up Paradiddle, even if this says connected, like it says now, just hit disconnect and reconnect. Sometimes you just have to do those dances. If you're pretty active and you're doing things, that doesn't happen. But like I said, if you leave things to lag for too long or something that just disconnects out of the blue, just quickly restart the app. I know it's annoying. Restart the app, disconnect, reconnect, good to go again. This is pretty crazy. Like, what kind of world are we living in where someone can just strap a VR headset on and actually punch out some usable drums which can eventually be used in real songs? You know, I think the real test is going to be getting an actual drummer to give this a go. You know, I think overall this isn't replacing a real drum kit or even an E-kit, but it's still an incredible feat of technology. If you're someone who just wants to dabble in some drumming fun, then this is perfect, you know? Yes, it's not an actual kit and you're not getting like the tactile feel of drumming, but if you've already got a Meta Quest or some kind of VR setup, then for 20 bucks, you can do anything from playing tutorial songs in the Paradiddle app through to setting up a wireless MIDI to lay down some scratch tracks for the rest of your band to hear. And to me, that is just nuts. And hey, if you've used this kind of setup before and you've made some songs, I'll link them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear it. And while we're here, then why don't you smash that like and subscribe button. If you want to join my Discord, then get on it as well. And as always, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. You're a legend, and I'll catch you on the next one.